Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today with us in this breakout session about building conversational AI apps in Slack. My name is Maria Jose Hernandez. I am a senior development advocate at Slack, and today I'll be co-presenting with Curtis, who is a senior staff engineer. Before we begin, I would like to remind you that please do not take the contents of this presentation to base your business decisions on. So today I want to invite you to explore the fascinating world of conversational AIs, a technology that is reshaping the landscape of the human-machine interactions. From serving as a thinking indicator to personalized assistant, conversational AI is revolutionizing the way we engage with technology. So let's delve into how conversational AI acts as a cognitive assistant. Much more like our own brains, it retrieves information, it analyzes data, and it responds to inquiries. Whether it's a Q&A session or researching different references, conversational AI enhances efficiency by processing vast amounts of information to provide more accurate and relevant answers. Moving forward, conversational AI transcends the mere information retrieval. It functions as a virtual assistant capable of performing different tasks such as drafting emails or generating images. This versatility makes it an indispensable tool for both professional and personal settings because it also enhances efficiency significantly. What sets conversational AI apart is its contextual understanding. By maintaining a history of interactions, it comprehends the context of conversations. This capability leads to more coherent and relevant responses, mimicking human-like comprehension. And of course, fostering seamless communication between humans and machines. Moreover, conversational AI excels in personalization. Through analyzing user data and preferences, it tailors responses to suit individual needs. This personal touch enhances the user experience and fosters deeper connections with the technology. Conversational AI represents a paradigm shift in human-computer interaction. With its ability to think, to assess, to understand context, and to personalize responses, it's reshaping the way we interact with the technology. Embracing conversational AI opens new doors to enhance productivity, efficiency, and of course, user satisfaction. Now that we know more about how conversational AI and all these multiple applications in real-life scenarios, let's bring it into the context of Slack development and how you can leverage the Slack platform to build powerful integrations and automations. So the Slack platform encompasses everything that integrates with Slack, offering a wide range of possibilities to developers. From Slack apps, which are fully featured apps built in various technology stacks, allowing developers to tailor their solutions to their specific needs. Workflow automation can be achieved without writing a single line of code. And this is thanks to the Slack's intuitive interface and built-in functionality. You already know Workflow Builder. Developers can also extend the capabilities of Slack by writing and deploying their own custom workflow steps and that we call functions. So you can leverage as well Slack hosted infrastructure. So let's take a look at these different parts in more detail. Slack apps provide rich functionality and seamless integration with all the Slack ecosystem. So developers, as I mentioned, can build in their own technology stack, and these apps will enhance collaboration, streamline workflows, and automate tasks or repetitive tasks within the Slack channels to make teams more productive and efficient. Automations play a crucial role within Slack, optimizing it and enabling users to automate repetitive tasks and streamline processes. Understanding the anatomy of a workflow will involve identifying the different building blocks that compose our platform. And those are like to start with the trigger, which is the one we use to execute workflows. That's how we kick off workflows. And it could be of 4 different types. So we could be user initiated. I bet you've seen, if you're already been at the mini hacks, you can create your own link to kick off these automations. It could be scheduled, and it could react to events that are happening within Slack, like a user joined the channel or like a message was sent to the channel. And finally, it can also connect to external systems through webhooks. Then we have functions, which are a base unit of reusable logic. The platform chips in with built-in functions, which are like out-of-the-box solutions to the most common methods, such as send a message to the channel. But it also allows people to create their own custom functions, meaning that you can find custom functions from our partners, such as like connect to Google Calendar, for example, or you can create your own depending on the systems that you have in-house. Because functions work independently from each other as a standalone blocks of code, they can be reused across multiple solutions, and they're made like easier to update and maintain over time. So together with these building blocks, triggers and functions make up workflows. And workflows, what they are, is just a group of different functions that could be executed with different triggers, not only one, and just run as a single automation. Workflows can also be composed in code today. And with the latest version of Workflow Builder, you can integrate your own custom functions into this no-code solution, which is Workflow Builder. Besides this, we also wanted to improve the developer experience of the way developers create and build apps in the Slack platform. So we prepare some tools in this developer toolkit that will allow them to have at least more a quicker development, but also more pleasant. And those involve, for example, the Slack CLI, which allows you to manage and deploy your apps and automations directly from the command line, as well as like we offer a bunch of like frameworks and SDKs that we update over time to facilitate building Slack apps. So we are now at an inflection point where generative AI technology has the potential to unlock the productivity gains that most organizations are looking for. However, while people, like 90% of people that we interview in our latest State of Work research have reported that their productivity levels increase with AI. Only 27% of the companies are actually using tools that involve AI. So knowledge workers have reported that they spend in average 2.4 hours daily only looking for information that just to do their basic work. So that means that they are already making decisions without critical context. So knowledge overload or information silos are not only unproductive, frustrating, and time-consuming, but also they're having a negative impact on business decisions. So that's why we also wanted to include the power of AI on our core product. Last September at Dreamforce, we announced the native generative AI built in Slack that allows you to generate conversation summaries, obtain key highlights in every channel, and of course, a much better AI-powered search. So because I were all to optimize work within Slack, I asked a friend of mine who works with Salesforce and who also uses Slack, what was something that she would like to see improve in the way that she works with her team. And it was really interesting to see the answer that she gave me. So basically, she works on Salesforce for managing all her clients. She's a customer success manager, but all the collaboration happens within Slack. What that means is that you spend some time writing to other teammates to collaborate on upselling a client or filling out all the requisites for a specific client. But then they have to spend the time to see what they talked about and generate actionable tasks. Well, it would be nice if we can improve that process. So by just clicking a button, she could generate the summary of what she just talked about with actionable tasks, and they just send it to Salesforce. So she can not duplicate the work that she's already doing. So let's see how that will work out. So they were talking about specific contact. So we pasted the link from Salesforce, from the content that we were talking about. And then we started a conversation in thread with her colleague. On Slack, on the Slack side, we have created an app that by just clicking or the trigger will be a custom emoji, which is called conversation over, when they already finished their conversation. And with it will trigger our automation. And what the automation will do is to take all the contents from the thread, summarize it so they have context on that we're talking about, and generate actionable tasks. So here you'll see how the AI generated all the tasks. And with Blockkit Builder, which is our UI framework, we also generated 2 buttons so the user can approve or review the content that's being presented here by the AI. I approved it, so it was sent to Salesforce. I was talking about this contact, which is the link that I pasted on Slack. And just by taking the context of the link, I created a task that is associated with that specific contact. And all the contents that we'll see that were created by the AI are also published there as a task. So this will be something that you will see at a very small scale. So now I'm gonna let Curtis explain you how to do this at a bigger scale with LLM models.
Thanks, Maria. How's everyone doing? I got the spot right after lunch, right? We're a little sleepy. Okay, let's see if I can wake you up a little bit. This talk is like the intersection of what I've been working on for the last 5 years at Slack, which is really interesting. I started with Workflow Builder, like the very first Workflow Builder, and then we rebuilt it to all the things that Maria was just telling you about. We call it the next generation of the Workflow Builder, but your custom functions, and in particular, I worked on the system that allows you to upload your code to Slack and we run it for you. And then for the last year, I've been working on AI and Slack's native AI integration. So this talk is like bringing all these things together that I've been working on for years, and I'm excited to share some of what we learned. So if you're trying to build on top of an AI model, you may be able to use these hosted APIs from these AI providers. Maybe you can call Anthropic directly, or maybe you can call OpenAI directly. But for some customers, they don't like the idea of their data going to some third party. They want to control it within your own AWS account, within your own VPC. And that's where we were at Slack. Like we cannot send our customer data to some third party. So what I'm gonna share with you is how we overcame those challenges and how we were able to deploy a large language model within our own VPC and keep our customer data within like the Slack trust boundary. Cool. All right, so there's a couple ways to do this if you're using AWS. The first of which is SageMaker. SageMaker is a tool that does a lot. You can use it to quickly build and operationalize ML resources or models. You could use it for training. You can use it to test different models against each other. But one thing that you could also use it for is to host large language models, and in particular, models from like different companies. And this part was really interesting when I got into it, where how can a model provider company that their intellectual property is this model, how can they expose that to customers without actually giving customers the model, right? Because if they just gave the model away, then why would the customer pay you for it, right? So this little part was interesting to figure out. And with SageMaker, you also have a pay per instance model. So with many other AI providers, you're paying per token. So a token is kind of like a word, but it depends on the word. I won't get into the details, but you basically pay per like amount of data in, amount of data out. Every API call, that's what you pay for. With SageMaker, it's a little bit different. You pay for the machine, and that machine can do X amount of tokens per minute, however you want to think about it. But it's a little bit different than the traditional like AI platforms. So I mentioned before, how would AI provider give customers access to their model without actually giving the customer the model? And the way that SageMaker does this is what they call through escrow VPC. Very similar to like an escrow account if you're buying a property or something like that, where it's a place where an independent third party kind of owns. So in this case, AWS has this VPC, and they give the model provider will give access to AWS to download the model into that VPC, and then they'll give access to the customer to have API access to that model as well. So that way you still have single tenant use. Like I'm not sharing a model with some other company that's running on the same infrastructure. I still have a dedicated machine for our use case, but I also can't SSH into that machine and just copy the model and run it on my own hardware as well. Yeah, so this protects both the buyer and the seller. The other solution that AWS has is called Bedrock, and this is a little bit more of a turnkey solution. It doesn't do a lot of the like training, Jupyter Notebook, experimentation building side of it, but it does allow you to deploy a LLM and get API access to that. And for this one, you're paying per token. And you're also have the ability to pay for like provision concurrency. If you want to ensure you have like a certain amount of token throughput, you can pay for it. Very similar to DynamoDB if you're familiar with that. So that's the infrastructure side. The next part is I wanted to get into some of the best practices when it comes to building a prompt. So after you get this infrastructure set up, how do you actually use it in your conversational AIs? And how can you get this LLM? What are some of the best practices that we learned to get this LLM to behave in a non-deterministic, it's a non-deterministic system, but you need it to behave in a deterministic way to think about it. So I wanted to share a few tips and tricks on what we've learned so far. Everything I'm gonna say, there's lots written about this. Anthropic has a really great prompt engineering guide, so if you really wanna go into details, I'd refer you there. OpenAI has some really good tips as well. But this is just some of the most important things that we learned. So first, let's talk about the autonomy of a prompt. So before I started working on AI, I didn't really understand this bit. Like I had used ChatGPT before, but I didn't realize like what I was typing into ChatGPT was the prompt. And I didn't realize how can I use that to build a product on top of it. So here's an example of a prompt that would summarize messages. Okay, so the stuff in green is typically like the prompt or the system prompt, like the things that you as an engineer would build into the system. So this is like instructions, like I'm going to give you some chat messages and I'm gonna ask you to summarize them. I want you to focus on takeaways and action items. The orange stuff, excuse me, this is dynamic per request, right? So like in MJ's example, she summarized that thread. The green part would likely be the same every time, and the orange part would change depending on the source data that you're sending in to be summarized. And when you're building these prompts, you want to focus on getting the best out of the model, leaning into the model's strengths. And these strengths are constantly changing every time a new generation of a model comes out. So you do have to experiment, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But one thing that was just a simple rule of thumb that we learned was put your instructions at the end. So back in this prompt, you see at the very end, I say, read these chat messages very carefully. You'll be asked to summarize them, and then respond immediately, right? If you put that at the beginning, sometimes the model may forget the instruction if your data is too long. So that data part in the middle, if I sent a lot of data in there, it forgets the beginning. It was like, much like me, like I'm really gonna remember the last thing you told me, and not so much the stuff at the beginning. So you have to think about that as you're writing these prompts and experimenting. Another example is to give examples of what you want. So let's just say your task was, I'm gonna give you a list of questions and I want you to categorize them in these certain buckets or something like that. Give the model like an example question and then the example category as well. And this goes in that prompt like every time you send it. It's part of that green area. It doesn't really change, but it's an example. So that way the model will know, okay, this is like an example of how I should categorize or how I should do this task. You'll notice one thing that I did here, which is kind of weird, is tag the prompt sections. So I have these XML tags in here that say chat messages. This actually helps the model know, like when you're referring to chat messages, it was this thing called chat messages in there. It doesn't actually have to be like pass, because you can see I'm mixing types of serialization here. I have XML and I have JSON, and that's okay, honestly. But you do want to help like designate the different sections. So when I was talking about an example, you may want to tag your examples with like an example tag or something like that. One thing that's really interesting, and maybe this whole part is like out of the window because Claude 3 released like 2 days ago, but more context isn't always better. So with these AI models, they all have a context window, which essentially means how much data can you put in and how much data can you get out. So for example, let's just say a model had a 100 token context window. That means you could either put 90 tokens in and get 10 out, or you could put 50 in and get 50 out. Like that window is for the input and the output. But some of these models have very large context windows, like 1 million tokens or 200,000 tokens. And we found that just because you have those tokens doesn't mean it's always best to use them. It's better to find out like what's actually relevant to the task you're trying to complete and include that. So you may not want to include the whole text of War and Peace just because you can, because it gives the model a little bit more liberty to hallucinate, and it may not be as great at completing the task that you're setting out to achieve. So I mentioned this before, but by nature, LLMs are non-deterministic, right? So if you put in the exact same question into a large language model 10 times, you will get 10 slightly different answers. So how do we build, like, how do you make these changes to this prompt once you have it? And how do you evaluate those changes? And what we stumbled upon was a crawl, walk, run model, where the crawl was first eyeballing. Like, I'm gonna make a change, and I'm just gonna run some tests, and I'm gonna look at the output and be like, it looks good to me, I'm gonna ship that. Funny story, like as I was helping to build Slack AI, I was working on getting the model to interpret language differently. And I did a little experiment, and I eyeballed it, and I was like, oh, this looks pretty good, and I shipped the change to production, and then some of our pilot users were sending bugs, like all of my summaries are coming back in Spanish, but I don't speak Spanish, and I don't see any Spanish in here. That was because maybe some of the links said like en-s, or like Spanish in it, or something like that. Like it wasn't like data that people were talking about, but it was a link, and the model thought it was Spanish, so it returned the whole thing in Spanish. So this crawl, like your mileage may vary. And then when you start to walk, you can do like automated evaluators. And this is like, if the output of your AI model or the AI result that you're looking for has some things that you can check for. So for example, for us in Slack AI, we check for citations, right? When you ask for a summary, or you ask for a natural language question and you want to search over your Slack data to get the answer to that question, we give citations or links to where the model got the answer from, so you can follow it, right? And that type of thing, you can write code to actually make sure that those citations are relevant, that they're not dead links, because sometimes maybe the model will hallucinate where it got the ID from, stuff like that. And then finally, the run. And we're on this journey now, and I think we'll continue our run like a year from now is going to be very different from our run today, but ship experiments to your users and correlate that with their feedback. So you have the steps of the past, but then you also have, was this a thumbs up or thumbs down result? And use that data to determine if your change to the prompt was actually worthwhile or what you're after. And that's everything I had for now. And next, we're going to talk about what's next on the Slack platform.
Well, that was like really exciting. So you have an insight of like what building the Slack AI is right now. Hopefully you had the time to test it yourselves within Slack. Something that we're also launching today that's really, really exciting for all developers is our Slack Developer Program, which is a program that will provide you with all the tools that you need to start building with Slack. It will provision sandboxes. You will have access to your own developer account. You will have a dashboard when you can see all events, and had access to experts in specific our dedicated Slack workspace when you can ask questions and share with members of your same community all the questions that you have when building with Slack apps. I think like the most interesting thing here are the sandboxes. So you cannot have to rely on having your own workspace to start building with Slack. And I invite you all to, if not sign up right now, just like take a picture of this QR code so you can take a look and learn more about the program. And of course, I don't forget to leave some feedback about this talk and then be able to drink coffee on us after this session. Was like quickly before we finish, wanted to show you some of the code that we use to build the example that we had in the beginning. So as I mentioned before, we had the Slack CLI. So that allowed me to easily from the terminal just type Slack create and have an already working app ready to work on. So quickly, just want to show you the different building blocks. So we talked about triggers, which is like the entry point to our automations. In this case, we're using an event trigger from all the 4 types that I talked about. And we are listening to reactions to the specific channel. You'll see in every file, you will have a definition of the function or the workflow that we're working on. And then the second part will be the implementation or like the logic handlers. This trigger invokes this workflow. So like very, very high level, just gonna show you, we have first the workflow definition, in which we add some metadata about the workflow, like the input parameters, the output parameters, and that can be used in every step of the workflow. This workflow has easily just one step, which in this case is a custom function that we are gonna call right here. So this custom function, as you see, it also has a definition when we have the inputs and output parameters, for example, what are required, what are optional, and then we just perform add all the logic that we want. In our case, for summarizing that, we are posting a message letting know the user that we are processing all the information in the thread, and then we just call OpenAI and sending all the information, all the conversation in thread to the OpenAI. Here's the prompt. Maybe I can improve it. Curtis will give me some feedback after the session. And after that, this is the OpenAI part. Then we are posting the response with 2 buttons. And this is what we talked about before about BlockKit Builder. Those are blocks, interactive blocks, that we are gonna handle later in the code right here. And what we're just doing is connecting to Salesforce to post that tasks within the associated account. So that's pretty much it. Very, very simple. I just wanted to show you so you know how easy it is to build Slack apps and connect with external systems within Slack. Everything could be managed from the manifest. So here we specified what are the workflows, what are the functions that we've created. We also add all the scopes that our app needs to run. And because we have the CLI, we just have to deploy our app by typing Slack deploy, and that'll be it. It'll handle for us. So I just wanted to show you. So if you want to take a look on your own time, or if you want to pass by the Slack mini hacks, we can talk more about developing apps in Slack. And I'll lost this, okay. And that'll be it. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Don't forget to give us feedback or sign up for the developer program. And I think we're ready to take on some questions if you have any. Don't forget to get closer to the mic so we can also hear together. Thank you.